How's it going, guys? This is Chris, the Tractor Trailer Boss again, coming at you from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Sorry for my brief hiatus, 2 to 3 weeks not making videos, but had some training I had to do at my job and some other stuff going on. So I'm sure there aren't too many guys losing sleep over me not making videos. But anyway, I hope I'm helping a couple of you guys out. If not, at least I'm making you laugh. And so today I'm going to make a quick video about a basic pre-trip with a set of double pups. I'm going to focus just mainly on the trailers today because I don't want to make the video too long, but on another video that I'll make shortly, soon thereafter, I'll encapsulate the tractor as well. But again, this is mainly a basic pre-trip that I do daily on a set of doubles. Again, it's a thorough pre-trip. It's not like taking apart. I'm not going to do a DOT, taking apart the whole thing kind of deal, but, you know, this is an everyday average. This is what mainly to look for when you're doing a pre-trip on a set of pups, or on a set of doubles, rather. So, real quick, if you haven't done so already, go ahead and smash that subscribe button, and go ahead and smash that like button as well. I love making these videos for you guys, make me feel good about myself, and subscribe and like my stuff. So, alright, so basically, I'm in the cab, everything's off. I'm going to start out, I want to make sure I get a good angle, it's pretty sunny today. I'm going to start out by obviously turning the vehicle on. Every truck is different, but I'm going to turn the vehicle on. Oh, sorry about that radio. Make sure it's in neutral, obviously, if you're driving a manual. Now, I'm going to build up the air, but, my lane sensors, turn on the lights and turn on the flashers. Now, while I wait to build my air up, you know, I turned on my lights, got my hazards going. Okay, and again, first thing I do, I have my hammer and my flashlight here. I'm going to bring with me out there. But I want to release the emergency line. I want to push the red button for simple guys, like simple-minded guys like myself. Push the red button in, keep the yellow or the tractor brake engaged. But by releasing the emergency brake, it basically allows air to flow through the system. So as I'm doing my walk around, if I hear any air leaking, I'm going to be able to identify it, you know, quickly. Actually, I'll be able to find pretty much the source of the leak during my pre-trip walk around. Whereas if I didn't do that, I'm not going to know if I have an air leak. I could be out on the road, and you know, I want to know about that stuff obviously right away. So you release that, and then you commence with the pre-trip. So get out of my truck here. Sorry for the bad camera angle. 3 points of contact rather. Whenever you're getting in and out of the cab, it's recommended. So anyway, you know, I'm going to check my tractor and my lead trailer. Now, your lead, I'm not going to go too far into depth on the basic stuff, but again, I'm checking my airlines, checking my fairing, make sure everything's good. And I'm going to check, I want to make sure I'm getting a good sign. You see that bolt over here, I'm checking my fifth wheel, make sure it's locked. The handlebar is pushed all the way in, at least it looks that way. And then another way of looking is that bolt that's sticking out of the fifth wheel. As long as that bolt is flush with the fifth wheel, there's no space in between there, and the handlebar's all the way in, that's a good way to make sure you have a good hook. And while my knees still allow me to do so, I get under the, and I recommend everybody does this, get underneath the unit, shine a light on there, get camera angle, hopefully you guys can see that, but I always want to look under as well. The jaws are engaged, and I have a good hook. There's no space in between the fifth wheel, because if there was any space between the trailer and the fifth wheel, that's more than likely a top hook, and that's bad. You should redo the hook. You know, it's running the possibility of, you know, the jaws disengaging and you're dropping the trailer. So again, I checked my lead. The lead trailer, when you're pulling a set of doubles or triples, the heaviest load should be up front. So my lead is going to be the heaviest pup, and the kite is going to be, or the tail is going to be the lightest. So basically, you know, I'm at the rear end of my kite, or my lead rather, and you know, you give the tires a whack, check the tread on the tires. I'm gonna give them a quick whack with my hammer. All right, and what I look for is I'm gonna get underneath again, and I focus on the main points. I want to check first things first, I want to check the brake cans, make sure they're on, and make sure they're both either a short stroke or a long stroke brake can. They could be either or, but they have to match. They can't be one or the other. And the way you could tell short stroke and long stroke is short stroke will have a circular nose or a nipple there, and a long stroke will be square. And again, you can see the caging bolt here. You know, you don't need to be a mechanic to know this stuff, but you take a look at the stuff. Take a look at the brake cans rather. You make sure they're there, they're not dangling, they're not loose. And you know, I'm looking for, you know, any kind of, you know, rust or anything that looks out of the ordinary. Now I'm going to look at the leaf spring and the U-bolts. No cracks in the leaf spring, and I want to make sure my U-bolts are on and are engaging the leaf spring, which is here. And I want to make sure that the bolts on the bottom of it are secure right there. And again, I'm sorry about the bad camera angle, but basically, you know, you could get under there and you could take your hammer like this and kind of yank the U-bolts. You could probably have better luck doing it from the rear, but basically what I do is when I look at my U-bolts, I make sure they're, and let me see if I can get a better angle here, but what I look for, there we go, what I look for is cracks in the leaf spring. There's no cracks. And I look for these U-bolts, if they look flush around the leaf spring, and these bolts on the bottom, I want to make sure they're securely fastening the leaf spring. I'm looking for that, and again, I don't yank on the U-bolts every day, but they look loose. I'll yank on them, I'll pull on them, and if they're loose, do not take that trailer. That needs to go to the shop, or you need a mechanic or a body guy to look at it, trailer guy, because loose U-bolts, recipe for disaster. So again, normally though, and again, I'll be honest with you guys, I just look at them. If they look like they're non-problematic, that they're tight on there, and again, I would say, I think twice in my 10-year driving career have I ever found loose U-bolts, but I still check for them every day, and if they look off, I'm pulling on them to see if they're loose. Now, I also check the thickness of my brake shoes right here, and over here, and I also make sure that that spring is there and the shoes are on and they're nice and thick, and then that's basically it. And again, we release the trailer brake, the emergency brake line, so if we did have an air leak, we'd hear it. So that's basically what I look for underneath a trailer, whether it's a pup or a van or whatever size trailer it is. I look at the brake cans, make sure they're on, and make sure they're the same, whether they have a circular nose or a square nose. I look at my brake shoes, make sure they're thick and that they're on there. I look at my leaf spring, make sure there's no crack in the leaf spring, and I make sure my U-bolts are on and that they're not loose. Anyway, now I will move on to the dolly connection of both the lead and the kite. Check my tires, check your tread on your tires. That stuff is sort of non-negotiable and universal, whether you're pulling a set of doubles or a van or whatever, triples. You always got to check your tires and your tread. Now, I start at my lead trailer. I usually start at one end of the dolly and work my way back. So I'll start with the lead, connection on the lead. I'll go over to the pintle hook and I'll pull, make sure that's tight. And also by pushing in the red emergency line, it also locks the dolly. I hope you guys can see or get a clear shot of this. Right here, this piece right here is whenever the emergency line is disengaged, it locks the dolly. Whereas if it was pulled, if the red button was pulled out, this locking mechanism would release, allowing me to drop out the dolly if I needed to. So that's another reason why we push in the red button, because we want to make sure that that dolly jaw is working correctly, because if it's not, then another big red flag, don't take that trailer. So so again, I've checked my pintle hook, make sure the top is locked and make sure the jaws of the dolly are engaged. Now my chains, a lot of people, these are not crossed, but I crossed them, so somebody else did this hook for me, so I'm going to go ahead and change these. A lot of guys do one or the other. I like to cross my chains, and I'll go ahead and do that now, because by crossing your chains, if God forbid set ever came apart, by crossing the chains, you have a higher likelihood of keeping the kite in a straight line, whereas if they weren't crossed, the kite could dangle. I mean, if this thing comes loose anyway, you're going to have mucho problemos. But again, crossing them is just an extra little, you know, step. Now, I want to make sure my light cord is in and securely fastened. And again, I want to make sure my lines going from the dolly to the lead are on and not crossed. The one on the left goes to this one, and the one on the right goes to the other one over there. They look good. Now, okay, so my dolly is connected to my lead properly. Now I'll go back to my kite. Pretty much the same thing. My light cord is connected, and my air fairing going from the dolly to the kite is connected, and everything looks good. Now there's going to be an air valve on the dolly. You can see this one here. What I like to do is, and what is recommended is you release that air valve, and you want to make sure you hear air releasing, which is perfect. That's what we're looking for. That basically says that the dolly air tank is charged and that your dolly has brakes, which is a good thing. If you don't hear any air come out, now some of them have a lever like this, other ones have a button that you push and you'll hear air release. That's what you're looking for, because if no air comes out of the dolly, that means you're not getting any air to your brakes on your dolly or your kite, which is not a good thing. So again, it's very important to check that. So finally, and all dollies are different, but this particular dolly, and many of them have a like a landing gear leg. You always want to make sure that that's raised. There's a crank handle where if I was dropping out this dolly, you could crank this handle down and this leg would come down, you know, ultimately enabling you to move the dolly around singularly. And again, you want to make sure that that's raised above as well. Now, as I'm walking around, I'm obviously checking my obvious tires, the tread on the tires and the air on the tires, and I'm going to want to get under my dolly and do the same thing I did under my lead trailer, which, and again, it looks the same. I want to check my fifth wheel. There's a little gap in between there. However, I looked at the handlebar and the bolt, and there was no distance. But let's just double check anyway. I want to show you guys what I mean. You do the same kind of thing. There's no space in between that bolt, and the handle crank is pushed all the way in. And so we're good to go in that regard. And I'll give it a little yank before I leave. But again, the jaws are engaged. On a good hook, most of the time you could see the bottom of the kingpin underneath the jaws, so you know that it wasn't top hooked and there's no space between the trailer and the fifth wheel. Now I'm going to get underneath the dolly again, and I'm looking for the same thing I look for underneath the lead trailer. My leaf springs have no cracks. My U-bolts are on, and they look like they're on firmly. And my bolts on the bottom of the U-bolts are on. Sometimes you'll find a bolt missing or a bolt that's loose. It's no good. You're going to want to get that. You're going to want to get that looked at. Don't take that. And then obviously on my brake, I want to check the thickness of my brake shoes, the spring that's in there. Sorry if you guys can't really see too clearly. And finally, on my brake, I didn't show you guys this on the lead trailer, but the cotter pin on each brake, you need to make sure that that's there. And the cans are obviously the same, short stroke or long stroke brake cans. They are indeed the same. So we will move on to the kite and essentially do the same thing we just did with the lead trailer and the dolly. We'll check our tread on our tires. I usually start from one side to the other, from the outside in. Tread on the tire looks good. A couple rocks in the tread, no big deal. Make sure there's air in the tire. You kind of get used to hearing the ping. And again, basically, from my point of view, I'm looking at the whole setup. Check your brake shoes first. They're short stroke, universal, the same on each side. That's good. The caging bolt is in there. A lot of times you'll see like the nipple removed, or you'll see like a lot of times they'll have like a nipple cover and it'll be off. But as long as the caging bolt's in there and you take a look, you're good to go. And again, I'm checking no cracks in my leaf spring. I'll get another perspective from the other side, but it looks like my leaf spring is good. My U-bolts are on. I've seen this shaft, I've seen once or twice this thing cracked off. So you got to make sure that, you know, especially on these older trailers, that nothing is rusted out or corroded. You know, again, your U-bolts are on, nothing is cracked. And I'll look over on the other side. Again, I know it's dark, I'm looking for cracks in my leaf springs, my U-bolts, and now finally my brake shoes. Looks like there's new shoes over there, and this side looks pretty thick as well. So that's basically it. And obviously, again, the tires, you want to make sure the nuts, you could, you know, put your hand on each nut and turn it and see if it's loose, but you want to make sure your nuts and also are on and secure. And also there's grease inside here, there's oil rather, a lubricant rather. Sometimes the lubricant will leak, so if you ever see any kind of like lubricant or oil that's you know, leaking or dripping from this part of the tire, you want to get it looked at, because that could cause a brake fire. The lubricant, you have a leak somewhere in the in this chamber right over here, and that could be a very problematic scenario if you don't catch it in time. It's actually a pretty common occurrence. So, and then finally, I'm also going to do the obvious. I want to check my lights, make sure all my lights are working. Again, I turned on my lights before I started this. I'm a little out of shape, forgive me, but all my lights are working. Running lights, my brake lights, my flashers, and obviously I'm checking for any physical damage to the trailer. These two that I'm pulling today have seen better days, but there's no physical damage, which is good. And again, I'll go to the rear, looking at my lights now. Obviously on my kite, if you can see here, I'll have my glad hands, my dummy glad hands. They're sealed on each side here, and I'll have my pintle hook. If I was hooking triples, you'd basically repeat the process. I'll do a demo on hooking and unhooking sets of doubles and triples in the future, but basically you want to listen for any air leaks, and you don't hear any. And again, we're probably the third time I've said it, but we're going to be able to hear any air leaks because we pushed in that emergency brake line. The red button, we pushed it in, allowing air flowing through the system. So if there's an issue, an air leak issue, we're going to hear about it. And finally, from the rear view, you could see the brakes. Make sure your cotter pins are on there, which they are. They're on the other side. And you could also get another perspective of the U-bolts and the leaf springs if you go walk around the other side of the trailer. But you know, usually I'm so used to it, I could get a peripheral viewpoint of both sides just from the driver's side. But for sake of this video, you know, now we're on the other side of the trailer, and I'll just repeat the process. Looks a little rusty, but there's no cracks. The U-bolts look on. And again, one more time. And again, you want to look at everything else. I mean, you don't have to be a mechanic. You know, if something looks off or rusted out or like it's seen better days, get it checked out. Go to the shop if you have a shop, or call a vendor. You know, better safe than sorry, man. You know, yeah. When in doubt, ask questions. I still do that to this day, if you couldn't tell already. And you know, it's pivotal in doing this. So that's basically it. I'm going to continue my walk around. I'll check the tires on the passenger side of the rig. But other than that, as long as I don't find a tire issue, we're going to be good to go. And that's basically how you do a basic pre-trip on a set of doubles. And again, stay tuned. I will do another video incorporating a tractor as well, and a van, but that's basically what you're looking for, people. Okay, those are the basics. I'm sure you could go a little further into depth, but these are the basics, man. All right, thanks for tuning in. Go ahead and smash that like button again if you haven't done so already, and if you have done it already, do it again. I'm just kidding. Have a good day, guys. Thanks.